Hey kiddos! Alright, it's time to talk about writing compare and contrast essays. You've done a journal on this, and this PowerPoint is a little bit longer because compare-contrast essays can be a little bit difficult, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it. Remember, my job is to push you. So don't get nervous when you hear this. We're going to walk you through it. And let's get this PowerPoint going for you. So, what does it mean to compare and to contrast? So, if you are trying to decide which person to date, you might make a list comparing them and saying what's different about them or what's the same about them. So, things that are the same is when you compare. Things that are different is when you contrast. Okay, so here are some basics about this essay. So your goal with this one is to take two different things and explain how they're the same and explain how they are different. That's your goal. Now, it's going to feel informative, and you're basically writing an informative essay, but the main thing that you're concentrating on is what things they have in common and what things they do not have in common. So all you're doing is presenting the information for the reader. You are not making a pro-con list, so anywhere in your paper, if you have the words pro, con, advantage, or disadvantage, we have a problem. Because you're not persuading them to pick one of the two things that you're talking about. You're just explaining the two things. So this is going to come in very, very handy with your patient's treatment options, and we're going to get to that in a couple minutes. So remember, you're just explaining and informing your reader how two things are similar and how two things are different. That's your goal. So sometimes it really helps when you're doing this essay, instead of doing a traditional outline, doing a visual outline that's called a Venn diagram. So some of you may be familiar with this from math or from science, but if you're not, that's okay. So what you do is you take two circles, which I've done. The part of the circle that doesn't touch the other circle is just about the one topic. So I actually stole this picture off Google, and it was about pizza places. So this part of the circle that doesn't touch the other circle is just information about this Pepper's Pizza place. In the other circle, this part that doesn't touch the other circle is just talking about Amante's Pizza place. The place in the middle where these two circles meet, this is what they have in common. So that's why this Venn diagram can be really helpful for outlining your paper, because now you visually can see how they are different. So they have different locations. One delivers and one doesn't. One has a long seating time and one doesn't. And here are the things that they have in common. They both have the same menu items, they both use different ingredients, and they're priced similarly. So this is the way to brainstorm your compare-contrast essay. Okay, so with these thesis statements, we've talked about thesis statements before, and we've talked about announcing your intentions. So one thing that we want to avoid at the college level is doing a thesis statement like the first bullet point that says, this paper will compare and contrast Pepper's and Amante pizza restaurants. It is a thesis statement, but you guys are all better than that. So when you started with me, you started with maybe the second bullet point. There are many similarities and differences between Pepper's and Amante, which I just realized I spelled wrong, pizza restaurants. Okay. So let's push you a little bit more. So at the college level, when we write a compare-contrast thesis statement, we're going to try and still keep it general so you don't get boxed in. to talking about particular things. But maybe you're going to pick one or two of the most common things that stand out. So you saw this Venn diagram, and we talked about how they have different locations, different delivery things, different wait times, but they serve the same stuff. So the thesis I created is the bottom bullet point. Peppers and Amante have similar prices and ingredients, but their atmospheres and willingness to deliver set them apart. So you can totally steal my skeleton of this. So you would replace Peppers and Amante with whatever your two topics are, and you may use the have similar, and then you'd have to fill in the blank and the blank. And you can take my butt there, and you have to fill in the blank and the blank. And you may steal my set them apart and kind of use the skeleton and then just fill in your own information. So the first bullet point would be a thesis statement that maybe you would write in high school. Your second bullet point is still a thesis statement, and it's a thesis statement that could work. But we're shooting for that bottom bullet point because you guys are writing at another level now, and you guys can handle this. Even if you don't believe so, I know you can. So one of the most important things in this paper are going to be words that are called transitions, and they help you move from one section to the next. So think if you've ever watched the news before, when the broadcasters are getting ready to finish up the news, and now they want to talk about the weather. So what do they usually do? So usually the broadcasters, I can't think of what they're called for some reason, the anchors or whatever, they start talking about stupid stuff that has nothing to do with anything. So if they were just talking about a fire, they might do something like, speaking of that hot fire, we're supposed to have great weather this week. Isn't that true, Mr. Weatherman? And now the camera pans to the weatherman. And the weatherman says, you're absolutely right. And then the weatherman starts going into the weather. Then when he's done, or she is done with the weather, does another one of those kinds of things and says, well, at least we'll have great weather for that parade this weekend. Right, Mr. Anchor person? Because that's where the next reporter's article's coming from. You've seen this all the time, and it seems like just like BS banter. But what it's actually doing is it's transitioning the viewer so that you know what's coming next, and it smoothly moves you from the news to the weather to the news to the sports. Because without those things, imagine what it would be like if all of a sudden the anchor is talking about a deadly fire and then the screen cuts to the weatherman and the weather starts. It's like an abrupt change. So that's what a transition is. And transition words are going to be really, really important in this paper. So here are just some words to help you out. You do not have to use all of these. You do not have to make sure that they're all incorporated, but if you're stuck, it might help you out a little bit. I have never had a student use in like manner, which is at the end on the right-hand side in the second row. Most students use similarly, conversely, which means the opposite, however, unlike. Those are the most common ones to help you show how things are the same and how things are different. So you're going to use these kinds of words everywhere, and that's okay. Okay, so here's the hardest part of this paper. Usually picking two topics people have an easy time doing. I've had students who have written, I had one student did an awesome compare-contrast paper on alligators versus crocodiles. So anything you can kind of put verses in the middle, you're fine. That's why the picture in the back is apples versus oranges. And I've actually had a student write a full paper on apples and oranges, and that was fine. So you don't have to pick a complicated topic, but outlining this paper is going to be absolutely so important. Because you have two topics, and because you're talking about different points from two topics, the information can get mixed up very quickly. If we go back to the Venn diagram really quickly, even though this has 3 differences and 3 similarities, you do not have to have an even number of similarities and differences. Maybe sometimes the 2 topics that you might pick might have tons and tons of similarities and very few differences. And that's okay. And you don't have to have a similarity for every single difference. So just like the cause and effect, as long as you somehow represent that these items are different and you somehow represent that these items have something in common, you are fine. But there's 2 ways to outline this. So I'm going to show you what's in the PowerPoint, but then I'm going to come out of the PowerPoint and I'm going to use this Venn diagram as an example because I don't want this to confuse you a little bit. So I don't care if you remember the names of these outlines or not. Usually, the thing that I find pretty funny is that if you read about compare-contrast outlines in an English textbook, it will say, use the outline that the content most dictates you to use. And most beginning writers especially, even me as a seasoned writer, kind of sit there and go, what the heck does that mean? So, when I show you both of these, here's what I want you to do. I want you to keep an open mind with both of them, but there's going to be one that you might like better, it might feel easier, you might be more attracted to it. That's the outline style that you're going to pick. Now the other thing is that when you start writing this paper, if you start hitting roadblocks and it's not working, it might be because the other outline style might in fact actually work for you. So that was part of the reason that you did this journal for me, was because I could see which outline you picked naturally on your own. So, one of them is called the point-by-point outline. Basically, what you do with this one is that you pick the main things you want to talk about, and you make any comparison and any contrast within that. So here's where I'm going to stop the PowerPoint for a minute, and I'm going to go to that pepper and Amante example, because I think the slides that's coming up next might be a little bit more confusing. Okay, so my first paragraph is going to be my introduction. My second paragraph is going to be my background information. So maybe in this I'm going to explain and describe Pepper's restaurant and Amante's restaurant. Now, I have no idea where these restaurants are. Like I said, I stole the Venn diagram off Google, so I have no idea where they are. I don't know if they're real, but it works as an example, so let's just go with it. So now here's where your point by point starts. So if we look back to your Venn diagram, you think of the points that you wanted to make. So I'm going to go back to that Venn diagram. So some of the points that we talked about were what they serve, their ingredients, their prices, their location, their delivery, and wait time. So those are 6 things. Okay, so let's just jot those down really quickly. So it was location, delivery, prices, wait time, ingredients, Location, I gotta cheat again. It's a good thing we're doing this. Wait time, prices, and what's on their menu. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, good. These are the 6 points that we want to make. So since these are the 6 points that we want to talk about, and I keep saying the word point like that because remember this is called a point-by-point outline. So with these points, okay, so with these points, what we're going to do is this is how we're going to make our outline. So we're going to take these points that we have, and we're going to decide which order we want to put them in and how we want to talk about them. So maybe the first thing that we want to talk about is location. So this is our first point. So now we're going to pick one of these restaurants. So let's pick Peppers. So we're going to say that Peppers is located, I don't remember because I stole that Venn diagram, in downtown Chapel Hill. So I guess, what is that, South Carolina, North Carolina? So it's located in Chapel Hill. The rest of this now I'm making up. Maybe it is in a suburb. It's got great parking. And it's on a main road. Okay, so now we've talked about Peppers. Now we're going to talk about Amantes. Now, in the first section of this, where I just talked about Peppers, all I did was inform the reader about this information. I didn't say anything about Amantes. So now I'm going to talk about the same thing, but here's where I'm going to incorporate similarities and differences. So, unlike, and this is how I do it, I put my transition words right in my outline. You don't have to do this. So, unlike peas, because it's not in Chapel Hill, it is in Carborough. And the rest of it I'm going to make up. So, unlike peas, it's in the city. Similar, I'm going to, wait, I changed my mind. Unlike no parking, or it's going to be street parking. And if it's in a city, unlike maybe it's on a main road in a office building. So if you notice, I don't have to have any similarities there at all, and that's okay. So the next point I want to talk about is delivery. And this is what you're going to do for every single point that you want to make. But if you notice, the big issue is that your connection, your similarities, your differences, they're going to come in when you talk about your second point. So for delivery, to keep it consistent, we're going to talk about Peppers first again. So were they the ones that did deliver? No delivery. No delivery. Pickup time 25 minutes. And maybe that's all we have to say for that. So, Amantes, unlike peas, it delivers. And maybe that's all we have to say. And of course you have to expand on this point, but I just hope that you're seeing that this is where the similarity and this is where the difference comes in. So we would do this with prices and wait time and ingredients. Now, what I do want to do is do the next one just so I could show you how some similarities come in. Well, I'm going to lie. I'm going to do menu. I don't mean to lie. It wasn't intentional. So for Peppets or peppers, we're going to say that they have quick Italian foods, quick foods. So they offer sandwiches, appetizers, hoagies, or grinders or subs, depending on where you're from. And what else is a quick food? Yeah, we'll stick with that. And pizza. We'll also say they have sit-down dinners. So maybe you want some vodka pasta. They do salads, dinner rolls. You're getting the point, I hope. Okay, so for Amante, they have similar quick foods. And again, I'm making all this stuff up. But for Amante's, maybe menu items, they do have the same quick foods as Peppers. So they do the sandwiches, the apps, the hoagies, the pizza, da-da-da-da-da. But because it's in an urban area, in an office building, they don't have the space for tables and chairs and sit-down service. So this is how you can incorporate similarities and differences for each of your points. So if you notice up here, all of these points were differences. These points were differences. And here I have a similarity. You don't have, this could be all similarities if I want. Like I said, as long as you represent how things are similar and how things are different, you're fine. You don't have to do a similarity and a difference for each point that you want to make. So, in the PowerPoint, I did this, but I used PC computers and I used Macs. So, this is the same exact thing that we just did. So, you might like it, you might not. The other option is called block outline. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop back to Peppers and Amantes. And I'm going to change this a little bit. I do want to zoom out just so that you can see this outline. This is the point by point. And maybe you can pause the video, you could zoom it in. But this is the same thing that's in the PowerPoint. I just used the two restaurants. Okay, so I'm going to open a new document, but I'm going to put them side by side so you can see what I'm doing. Now we're going to talk about the block outline. And again, you're going to decide if you like this or not. So we're going to start the same way. Our first paragraph is going to be our intro, as always. Our second paragraph is going to be our background information. But basically with a block outline, I just want to label these on top so you remember which one you're looking at. These are in the PowerPoint too, so don't worry if they're a little difficult to see. It's not my intention. I'll zoom them in again for you. So the thing with the block outline is what you're basically doing is you're going to write two separate informative papers and then stack them on top of each other. So you're actually going to have two background paragraphs. So over on this side, we kept talking about Peppers first. So we're going to do background information just on Peppers. That's it. Our next paragraph is going to be Peppers location, Peppers delivery, Peppers menu items. So I took the same points, but all I'm going to do is talk about pepper, 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 pepper. When I'm done talking about pepper, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to include another background paragraph just on Amante's, and I'm going to put a transition in here to help the reader segue from pepper, 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 now to Amante. So now I'm going to do the same order, but I'm going to do it Amante's stuff, Amante's location. Amante's delivery, and you're just going to give facts about it. You're not going to say, oh, it's similar, oh, it's different, oh, it's similar, oh, it's different. It's just an informative paper. So you're just going to say, Amante's is located in Carborough in the city and offers street parking, and it's located in a main office building. You're just going to be factual. That's it for this one so far. Okay. So now here comes the special difference with the block outline. So I'm just going to blow this up a little bit. After you do all informative, and after you do all informative, now you have to talk about the similarities, and you have to talk about the differences. The thing with the block outline that some people get tripped up on is they think that their reader kind of automatically makes the connection between these two topics. And the truth of the matter is that they don't. So if you choose the block outline down at the bottom, you need a paragraph that blatantly spells out how these two things are the same, and you need a paragraph that blatantly spells out how these two things are different. So I'm going to hop back into the PowerPoint. And I did the same thing with the PC and the Mac. I just thought the peppers and Amante's might help you out because it was in that Venn diagram. Now you could, in here I have just one background paragraph. You could choose to do that. To be honest, most students enjoy putting another background paragraph right before they go into the second topic as a way to introduce it. But that's your choice as the writer. So here are some things that could go wrong with the block outline, and this is not to deter you from using it or make you afraid of it, but I like to tell you where it could possibly go wrong, so this way you can just have your eyes out and your ears open for it. So again, one of the big pitfalls is that a lot of the times the writer assumes that the reader automatically made the connections between what's similar and what's different. So they leave out these two clarifying paragraphs. If you leave these out, then all you've done is created one informative paper that goes off topic. So you need these. These are absolutely essential in order for this to become a compare-contrast paper. The other thing that some people don't like is with the block outline is when they do these clarifying paragraphs, they feel like all they're doing is repeating themselves down here. You can bring in new information if you want, or you can just reword the information you've used up here. That's your choice. But those are the two things that usually people don't like about the block outline. So here are the two of them side by side, just like I did with the Word document. And in a second, I'm going to put the Word document side by side again. So on the left-hand side is your block outline, and on your right-hand side is your point-by-point outline. So pause this if you want to look at it for a minute, because I'm going to switch back to Microsoft Word. So if I take my Microsoft Word documents and put them side by side, I guess I should do the same thing and put one on the left and one on the right. be helpful. Here's the difference. I know this point by point is a little more difficult to see because it's a little bit more detailed, but hopefully you're getting the gist by this. So here you do informative paper, similarities, differences. Here you do, here's the point I want to talk about, here's the information, here's the similarities and differences. And again, whichever outline style you choose is completely up to you. The one that might seem easier or the one that you might seem to like more, that's the one that you're going to want to pick. So here are your essay requirements. Again, this is going to be 3 full pages, double-spaced. You do not have to look anything up, so you really could do apples and oranges. And it's the same exact essay requirements as your other essays. 12-point font, 1-inch margins following MLA style. So, as far as citing things, if you decide that you do want to look up anything, that's absolutely fine. You do not have to, you're not going to be penalized if you don't use proper citations. That's okay. I didn't teach you how to do that yet, so it's not fair to grade you on stuff I didn't teach you how to do. If you know how to do a works cited page and internal citations and all that kind of stuff from maybe high school and you want to try them, go for it, but you're not going to lose points if you're wrong. Here's what I'm asking that you do. If you do look anything up, when you're writing a sentence, put the sentence in your own words and then give me according to and either www.com or according to the name of the website. That's what you would need to do for me, and we can avoid plagiarism. But again, you don't have to look anything up. So, why are you doing this? This is going to be extremely helpful for treatment plans for patients. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about as you keep going through this program is patient empowerment and getting patients involved in their own treatment. When patients are involved in their own treatment and their own treatment decisions, the chance of them doing what you need them to do goes up considerably. So if you give them information on traditional braces versus Invisalign braces, and you just give them all the facts, then they can decide which one they want. Do I use an electric toothbrush or do I use a manual toothbrush? Do I use wax floss or do I use one of those, it's called a proxy brush, which has a handle and it's got little spikes at the end of it, almost like a glass cleaner. Like, you know, those big wiry things that you reach into a glass and clean with, but it's way smaller. So, do I floss or do I use one of those things? Should I get a root canal or should I get the tooth extracted? Should I go to the dentist every 6 months or go to the dentist every year? Should I smoke cigarettes or should I use chewing tobacco? Should I smoke cigarettes or use those vapor cigarettes? So treatment, that's what we're talking about with treatment options or medicine options. So if you want to gear this topic towards something like that, you're totally welcome to, but like I said, you don't have to. When you get to the real world and you get into real offices, usually these compare contrast kinds of things turn into newsletters or pamphlets that you would give the patient to let the patient read up on it and decide. So that's where it's really going to come in handy for you in the real world. So, just some suggestions. Please make sure that you use an outline that you're comfortable with. Because when I see drafts of this paper, it's very obvious whether you've used an outline or not, because it goes very wrong very fast when you don't have something to guide you just because you have so much going on in this paper. Make sure that your comparisons and your contrasts are absolutely blatantly clear. It's totally okay to spell it out. You're not making your reader feel stupid. You would actually make them feel stupid by assuming they know what you're talking about. And please make sure that you ask me for help, any kind of help that you need. There is no stupid question. And this paper is a little tricky, so take your time with it. Look at that black screen. It's over. Aren't you happy? So you have the side-by-sides, and then I'll just show you these one more time because, again, if I haven't harped on it enough, outlining is super, super important for this kind of paper. Now, the other thing is that you also have samples of these papers in your sample packet, so make sure that you're looking at what people before you have done as well to help give you some ideas. Please feel free if you want to confirm your topics with me before you move on. I'm here for anything that you need to help get you through it, but I know you can do this, but you got to take your time and you got to use an outline. Good luck.